Hey guys. Wow, it's been a long time since I've done a video, and this is my first live video. So I'm a little nervous, honestly. I've never done this, and this is my first time kind of seeing the setup. Um, Seems easy enough, so I hope some of you guys are able to join. I know this is random that I decided to do a live because usually I just do like pre-recorded videos, but I thought, you know what, it's been a long time since I've made a YouTube video, and I want to do a live and hopefully get to chat with some of you guys live, actually, in person, if you will. But hey, yeah, thanks for joining, and if you're watching later, I hope this is helpful. But basically today I've been getting a couple of questions through different comments or different really through YouTube comments, I guess, through all my other videos about just some things, some manifesting questions that you guys have. So I thought that I would go ahead and answer some of those questions today if any come in live through the chat. And I also have a couple that I've written down here that I think are definitely worth talking about and that I'll touch on, all having to do with third parties. How do you kind of ignore third parties, or how do you not give them any energy or give them your time of day? And also ignoring the 3D, some techniques that I've kind of done to ignore the 3D, as I have been manifesting. And for those of you who maybe are just joining my channel for the first time or watching for the first time, I basically went through a breakup with my SP about a year and a half ago now. So it's been a while. And we are now like fully together. Jonathan. Hi. One of my buds just joined the chat. There's only two people here, but anyway, already distracted. Only two people in the chat or in the live, and I'm already distracted. Clearly, I'm great at this. But what was I saying? That basically my SP and I went through a breakup year and a half ago. We got back together once I found law of assumption and law of attraction, and really was able to kind of get myself confidence and self-concept up. Was really able to just kind of shift the relationship, and now we're together officially, and we actually just moved to Mexico in December. So that's something that I kind of want to give a little update on. And we also just got a puppy, which is absolutely crazy because I have wanted a puppy forever. So it's really cool that that ended up happening, and it was totally unexpected. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, my SP, Kevin and I, moved to Mexico. I'll use move lightly because we do technically live here right now. Like all of our stuff is in storage. But we're kind of testing it out for 6 months to see if we like it, to see if we want to stay permanently. But that Mexico has always been like where I feel like I've needed to end up, even in the past, like when I was young and had never even really met some. Like I grew up in Florida, so I knew a lot of Cubans, a lot of Puerto Ricans, but I didn't actually know many Mexicans when I lived in Florida, so I wasn't too in tune with like the culture. But for some reason, anytime something Mexican came up, I was like super drawn to it, and I always felt like that's where I needed to be, or like that's what I want to learn more about. And so when I moved to West Coast, and then I started dating Kevin, and I started making friends that were Mexican, and learning more about the culture and just the food and everything, and the cities and the country itself. Um, Absolutely fell in love. So it's wild that we're here, and it was totally just lucky. We got happenstance. We're in a tiny little town where my SP's family is from. So both his mom and his dad lived here when they were young, and then they moved to the States, I think in their 20s or something. I'm not sure time frame wise. But anyway, his uncle just happened to have a house here. His uncle also moved from Mexico to the States. His uncle just happened to have a house here, huge house, that he built for retirement and had never used. So this house was built, this like 5-bedroom house, 2-story, it's huge, and never used it. And offered us basically to live in it for like 6 months. And we're like, heck yes, why would we not take the opportunity? So it's been amazing. We both work remote. For also those of you who don't know or don't remember, I started a company back in 2018. So we work remote, and because I brought him on when we started dating as well, so we work together. So we're able to do all that remote, which is great, and we have high-speed internet. So it's been awesome. It's been really cool, and yeah, it's been incredible. But it was crazy because everything that I put on my vision board for 2022 came true pretty much. Though there's one thing I'm waiting on, and for that reason, I know I had some mental blocks kind of surrounding it, and I think it's happening ASAP. I think within the next couple of months. In fact, I'm assuming that it is, or intending that it is, but I'm not ready to retire that vision board just yet. Normally I would make a new one for this new year, but I'm like, no, it has a couple more months left in it. But everything literally came true. I literally had things like eat the tacos, lose the pounds. And sure enough, like, this is the year that, I did lose weight and kind of went on like a fitness journey, and, lose and eat the tacos. Like, we literally moved to Mexico. But the one that was the coolest is that I put this on my little video that was supposed to be a short and ended up being like 3 minutes long. But little paw prints were literally on the board because I wanted a dog so bad. But I just moved from San Francisco, where it's tiny, and like I travel quite a bit for work and just for fun. But so just the idea of like having a dog in San Francisco, even though it's a very dog friendly city, I just didn't feel like, I don't know, it seemed hard it seemed like too much of a challenge for me at that time. And I know plenty of friends who got dogs in San Francisco, but it just didn't seem like right timing. And my SP and I weren't living together at that time. And I think having someone, there to kind of share dual responsibilities helps also. So all that being said, it was crazy because I wanted a dog. And then sure enough, lo and behold, on New Year's Eve afternoon, like December 31st or December 30th, I guess we picked her up on the 31st. But on December 30th, my SP and I are walking from our house to the bus stop because we were going into the city. And out of nowhere, we just see this adorable little puppy, and like no other, it's just her and then this rooster. And the rooster's like screaming in her ear because there's roosters everywhere here. And it was the funniest thing because the only reason we even looked over there was because the rooster. And then we just die laughing because this rooster is in its own cage right next to her. And she's so cute. And it was funny too because roosters were like a running joke with us here because roosters crow or whatever it's called. They scream basically in like the middle of the night, which you think they would only do that in the morning. But anyway, so it's kind of funny. Roosters were a running joke, and then it just so happened that our puppy, who's now named Coco, was there, and we just fell in love with her. And I mean, literally, and it was crazy too because we missed our bus. And I remember that a couple other times I was kind of in like low-key shitty mood because we have to take the bus early to get to where we want to go. And I remember like a couple of times we were almost kind of like bickering because I was taking too long or he was taking too long. And we were just pressuring each other to hurry up so we could not miss the bus. But I remember this morning that morning that we saw Coco, I woke up and just like super positive energy, like with the mindset. And I know this, don't come for me. I know this is not law of assumption. This is more law of attraction. But for me, I do believe everything kind of happens for a reason, and that like if something doesn't happen in the moment it's supposed to, there's a reason behind it. Like something better is in store or something good is going to happen. But anyway, with that being said, we missed our bus and I didn't care at all. I was like, okay, we'll just chill. And it was like 6 a.m. It was early. And I was just in good spirits, high spirits. And sure enough, like that's when baby Coco came into our lives. And I just was like, we have to get her. And Kevin was my SP was a little more hesitant, but he was like, no, you're right. Like we have to get her. And just for context, like dogs in San Francisco are like $1,300. She's a mini schnauzer. But they're anywhere from 1,000 to like $1,500 US dollars. And uh, that's obviously a good chunk of money. Um, and we knew eventually maybe we'd have to pay that, but this was the cutest dog we've ever seen, and she was like under $100. So we're like, it's meant to be. We have to get her. And what's even more wild is this just happened last week, but we found out that the it's his distant aunt or something. It's somehow she's related to Kevin. I don't know the exact like tree, but she owns the parents of Coco. We're like, what? We like put it together because it's a small town. Like it's a small town. Everyone knows each other, and there aren't a lot of like dogs for sale here. Yeah, exactly. Manifesting Coco appearance. Literally, it's insane. And so we were sitting there at dinner, and we were like, we had her in our hand because we bring her everywhere, and the woman was asking like his aunt or cousin or whatever. I think it's his distant aunt, but she was asking like, "Oh, where did you get him?" We're like, "Oh, right down the street, like a month ago." She's like, "Oh my gosh, that's the puppy." Like they wanted to keep her originally, but something didn't work out like with timing. They were going out of town for the holidays or something, and so there were two puppies, and one of them got bought, and then she had given the vet this other puppy to sell, and sure enough, like those are Coco's parents, or that's the owner of Coco's parents. So it's just crazy. I feel like we manifested that too. Because Kevin and I were like, oh my gosh, imagine Coco gets to meet her mom, and like we were like, oh, it'd be so cute and so sad. Not sad, but like heartwarming. Anyway, so that's me rambling about my dog. She's Kevin, my SP, is doing like training with her right now. So she is not here, but I did want to bring her. Oh, I get it. I get it. Okay. Jonathan, you're manifesting a Coco appearance. Maybe she might because he was doing training with her. But she's not here right now. Anyway, okay, so kind of shift away unless anyone has questions about Mexico or anything, but I will kind of go into um, this last couple months, like my manifesting journey, and then I'll start answering your questions. So this past, not say month, but really it's been since like October, so it's been a couple months, but basically I haven't been doing videos, because it was really, really crazy during the month of like October, November, when my SP and I were moving, and I was like running on 3 hours of sleep a night and trying to sell all my stuff. And then we spent a good amount of time in Vegas with some of his family and just like getting things in storage before the Mexico move. And then when we got here, honestly, since October, personally, my SC has been kind of up and down also. So I feel like before I did another video, I wanted to get to a spot where my SC, my self concept, was in a really good spot. I didn't think it was fair for me to come on here and preach, all this law of assumption, law of attraction, manifesting stuff when I was constantly kind of on this roller coaster of having a really good day one day and having like a really not so great day another day. But I wanted to share that, one, to apologize for not making videos, but two, also just as kind of perspective that, I do feel like I have been able to manifest a lot in my life. Like I feel like I've been very fortunate, so far the journey that I've been on, and everything just keeps, more things just keep popping up, which I'll kind of dive into, like good things. But I wanted to let you know that it's totally normal, I think, to go through sort of these up and down periods of self-concept, especially when you're going through major life changes. And I don't say that as a limiting belief. Like I think that there you can get to a spot, and actually my friend Jonathan, who's here, I feel like is great at this. You can get to a spot where you are constantly in high SC and you're kind of in that God state and just in a mindset where you're just 100% knowing. But it's also okay that you maybe sometimes take a slide back, and as long as you get back on your mental diet and you really get back on, just really getting into a good mindset and a good energy and a good headspace, it's not going to ruin your manifestations. It's not going to, it might make them appear a little bit slower in the meantime, but it's not going to, things aren't going to go, if you're trying and you're spending a lot of time and effort into, not that it should take a lot of time and effort, but if you're actively prioritizing staying in a good headspace and a good energy, then good things will come your way, even if you're not in 100% confident self concept, like you don't have the best self concept at the time. And to give an example, on some of my past videos, I have talked about how in the old story with my SP, before we broke up, before we got back together, there were kind of third parties that weren't actually, they weren't anything particularly significant, but they were people that for whatever reason triggered me, right? Like I didn't want them in my SP's life. And there's only two of them, and both of them literally showed up, haven't showed up at all since 2 years ago. Basically they went away when I found law of assumption, and I started saying like, okay, they don't exist, they're not my reality, like they're in another reality. Both of them reappeared the week or two before we were supposed to move. I was like, are you kidding me? Like in the flesh, not even just like sent a message or whatever. No, they were like in person, in direct contact with them. But you know why that happened is because my SC was super low at that time. And it's crazy because every time I start to doubt, like, is everyone you pushed out really real? Like, it doesn't really actually matter. Yeah, it does. Like big time. Every single time the universe is like, yep, see, I told you, whatever you put your attention and energy on, that will show up in your reality. So it was wild to me that, I was having low self-concept, and then I was falling back into some old habits I didn't like impulsively checking Instagram, or like just focusing or thinking about things from the past that like don't matter. And sure enough, like literally, it was insane. Both of those people completely unrelated. They don't know each other, like from different areas of my SP's life, literally came into the reality. So it's just crazy. So I spent some time. I'm not so great at revising. Revising is something that I highly suggest, that actually my friend here preaches to me all the time, and I'm all for it. And I think it's a great thing to do. And there's a really good revision meditation by Brian Scott. And just to back up a little bit, in case you're not familiar with revision, it's basically kind of rewriting the story, if you will, or the emotions that you associate with something negative that happened in the past. And the quicker you do it, the better you'll feel. So when I, especially in San Francisco, was going through some of these times, anytime my mind would go to a negative space, I would take 10 minutes out of my workday or more if I could, or if it's a weekend, I'd do the longer meditation. But I would take time out and do the revision meditation, and try to rewrite my body's emotional response to what happened. And so my body has a positive sort of emotional state with what happened. So let's say a third party showed up. Let's just use a complete theoretical example, right? Let's say that this third party that I'm mentioning, I'm like, oh, she's gonna start. Maybe she showed up at an event, which actually happened. But so there's two ways that I could go about this. Is I could think about, dwell on the fact that she was at that event, or I can basically rewrite it in my mind and say she wasn't at that event. Like, no, we had a great time at that event. There was no arguing. Like, she was not there. Like, basically pretty much rewriting the story as if you wanted it to happen. So if something happened you didn't like, rewrite it exactly, if you were the author of a story, how you would choose to rewrite it. And that creates some more positive association with it, so you're not constantly dwelling on the old story. And this is something that I personally struggled with quite a bit, especially when my SP and I got back together, was dwelling on the old story. So if you can let that go and do these revision meditations, it does help a lot. And some people don't need the meditation. For me, I do. I do a lot of scripting, like essentially journaling. And so I find that with anything future, like stuff that I want to manifest moving forward, journaling or scripting, like writing things out exactly as I want them to happen, works best for me. And if it happened in the past already, that's when I stick to like revision meditations. That's what works best for me. But I know some people don't need to do meditations. You can just think about it in a more positive way, and that can definitely help. Um, so I just want to give a little bit of context there on why I've been MIA. But now I'm back and things are amazing. And just for one sort of anecdotal, like my life, hopefully positive thing that I can share with you guys, especially because I know this is a touchy subject for a lot of people, including myself. Valentine's Day is coming up. And I know that if you're going through shit with your SP or going through a hard time, that it can be really easy to fall into sort of this sadness or like this period of just feeling down because maybe you and your SP in the 3D aren't together, or maybe you're scripting and really focusing on and putting your energy into being with your SP on Valentine's Day. Totally 100% think that you should keep doing that and keep I actually have done I think it's 5 by 55, where for 5 days a week. Okay, sorry, I get so distracted by the chat. Okay, Speedy, sounds good. Sorry it's late. And Gloomy, I will answer your question. But we'll get back to that. Anyway, sorry. So Valentine's Day, right? So I did do last year I did the 5 times 55 method, which is you write out, you script out your what you want to happen, 55 times exactly as you want it to happen for 5 days in a row. And mine was surrounding Valentine's Day, that, my SP, Kevin and I, we were not officially together then. We got officially together in May, but we had been unofficially together for over 6 months. It had been a minute, I think, since October. But I think it was coming from a place of lack. So I would say be careful when you're scripting stuff out. But what was I going to say? But so on Valentine's Day last year, even though I spent weeks, in a positive state, like envisioning Kevin doing something super romantic, envisioning, that he was going to ask me to be his girlfriend officially on Valentine's Day again, and all this stuff, it didn't end up happening. It actually, I didn't hear from him all day. I think that he kind of emotionally shut down, and maybe that's a limiting belief of my own. But I ended up Uber Eatsing him a boba because it's kind of like our thing, and just said Happy Valentine's Day. But I was really sad. And he called me, and I didn't answer, and I was just reacting emotionally. But he just wasn't in a space where he was ready to act romantic on Valentine's Day. But it was just interesting because I had kind of scripted out all these crazy romantic things, and now 1 year later, sure enough, we're in a super official, super happy, healthy relationship, and we're gonna have this is totally just random chance that we ended up doing this, but we're doing this insane spa, and it's a resort in the middle of nowhere, with a romantic dinner, and it even has rose petals all over. We got to pick out a 3-course meal and an entire day of spa treatments. I kid you not, there's a 2-hour massage, a facial, all this insane stuff. And it was all his idea, and he planned it all. And I'm picking out this red dress, and it's just insane. So it did come true. It just came true a year later. So I think it's hard when you're scripting stuff out. And actually, this is kind of leading into one of the questions I got, is how do you ignore the 3D? And this isn't so much advice on how to ignore the 3D, but this is my just anecdotal experience. It's hey, if it's not happening right this second, as soon as you let go, it will happen in the future. It is going to happen. But last year I had so many limiting beliefs surrounding Valentine's Day and surrounding like just holidays in general. Like holidays in general are, I think, a touchy spot for a lot of people, but have always been a touchy spot for me. But I always just thought, oh, I'm meant to be alone on holidays. And that's something that I've kind of carried with me since like childhood, and that you have to learn to let go of that story. Like if you're constantly repeating a story like, oh, guys or girls never want to be my Valentine, or I never get to be with someone on holidays. You have to let those stories go. Otherwise, you're just going to keep manifesting that. And I think last year for me, I was seeing that in residual. And this year, obviously, I'm seeing the complete opposite of that, which is really cool. But so, not really advice on how to ignore the 3D, but just kind of like positive. Um, Encouragement if what you're seeing isn't happening right this second. It will happen in the future just as you want it to. It could be that you have some lingering limiting beliefs that I would still try and work on and keep pushing through. So one of the questions, I'll kind of transition to the questions that I got now, is how did you deal when you were wondering about third party with your SP, that he was looking for someone else or he met someone else or missed them? How did you handle that thought? So I think the question is asking just when my SP and I were not together. Background again, for those of you who haven't watched some of my other videos, there was a very brief period of time when we were not together. We were still in contact and kind of like dating, but that he mentioned he was going to be on dating apps and like potentially dating other people. And that was like, this was before I found Law of Attraction and Law of Assumption. It was actually, it was a little bit after I like, I at the time I was really struggling with thinking of him on dating apps. And so he said he just wanted to be friends, like probably a month later after we were kind of dating. And then that's when I found Law of Assumption and Law of Attraction. Life completely changed. And I have a whole video on that. So if you want to watch that video, definitely check it out. But how did I ignore the third party slash him potentially dating someone else? It was hard. I'm not gonna lie, because we were essentially, we started like really, we broke up in July and kind of dated August, September, August, no, just August. And then we said we were just gonna be friends, but that didn't work. We started dating like, well, and I found literally that night is when I started looking into Law of Attraction and Law of Assumption. So we started pretty much dating casually again right after that. But so there was a time period of like September, October, I'll say, through May, where we were not 100% official, even though we were saying like I love you and stuff. And it was very obvious like neither one of us were seeing anyone else. We weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, so that wasn't like off the table for either one of us. So I really had to play into the idea and really work on my own SC that there's literally no one else out there that's better for him than me. Like as far as being a perfect match, like I really had to take him off of the pedestal and put myself on the pedestal and be like, there's no, like, even if he went on a date with someone else that he met on the app, there's not going to be that emotional connection. They're not going to be as interesting as me. They're not going to be as fun to be around as me. He's not going to be as attracted to them as he is to me. And basically I had to constantly give myself these like pep talks. And it's not, I think if you haven't done it before, it almost feels weird because you're like, oh, I think a lot of people, if your self-confidence or self-concept isn't in the best state, our natural response is to want to say, oh, that's not true. Like he's perfect or she's perfect. They could get anyone they want. But really, like when you start to dig in, that's not true. Like you think about all you bring to the table. I think you really have to identify like who you are and be proud of who you are. And so it was a constant conversation. And don't get me wrong, I had anxiety for sure around it. Like there were times where I'm like, oh, maybe he's on a date. But when I was first getting into that Law of Assumption, Law of Attraction, first getting into this mindset, I was pretty like blindly focused on staying in a good headspace. Anytime I caught myself in a negative headspace, I'd be like, nope, that's not true. Like I'm number one. Like he can go on dates because that's just going to reinforce that he wants to be with me and that he loves me and that I'm wifey, as Dylan James says. That no one else even compares. And I focused on all the connections that we had too, and reminded myself, like, he and we worked together too. Like that's like a whole other connection that we have that I hadn't really thought about like in a romantic way before, but it really is like a connection. So I focused on everything. I'm like, we have the work connection, we have the like humor connection, we have the like all these different connections. I would just like basically repeat them in my mind, and sure enough, in time, it becomes easier and easier to believe. And then I really started to embody this state of, hey, and not in an egotistical way, but in a way of like, hey, I'm the shit. Like I know who I am, and I know that it's hard to wrap my head around, but like I know that he in the end will want to be with me, and even if he doesn't, like I that's his loss, was kind of like the mentality that I had to take on, but it took a long time to get there. It definitely is, when you're new to doing that, it definitely takes some self work and takes time. So I would say don't expect that change to happen overnight, but do a lot of scripting. I did a lot of affirmations, so I'd write down, I am everything that I honestly felt like before manifesting. I felt like I wasn't. Like I mentioned this in another video, but I never thought I was funny. So I would write down in my little affirmation journal, like, I am hilarious. Like, my SP thinks I'm hilarious. And I'll just mention this real fast too, because I got this question in another video. If you should name your SP specifically, and I always do. I do believe that, like, I think it adds more personalization, and it makes it more real for you. Like for me to just be like, if I didn't have a specific, like an actual specific person in mind, if I just wanted like a partner, then I would say SP. But because like I know my SP is Kevin, like I would write, okay, Kevin thinks I'm hilarious and stuff like that. So going back to dealing with third party, or dealing with the idea that he was with someone else, I also just kind of focused on being the best version of myself, in the sense that I wrote out everything I wanted to be. And I mentioned this again in some of my other videos too, but I mentioned like, hey, I want to be like artsy. I want to be fashionable. I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good wifey. Like I want to learn to cook. And I wrote out like an action plan of what I could do to make me feel more in tune with those parts of me. So, for example, the artsy thing, being artsy is always something I've enjoyed, but as I've gotten older, I've put less time into. So I said, okay, on Saturdays, if I don't have like social plans, then every Saturday I'm gonna spend, half a day like doing something artistic, whatever that might be, like if it's painting, if it's crafting, whatever. Or, I said, okay, I want to be a good cook. So a good wifey, like that knows how to cook, because I never really learned how to cook. So I said, okay, I'm gonna, watch a YouTube tutorial, and every Friday buy the ingredients and figure out like what's one new recipe I want to learn how to make. That way, like, in the future, I'm good at cooking, and honestly, like pouring this energy into myself, and really having kind of a day-to-day plan of who I wanted to be, which I still do this today, by the way. Even though like my SP and I are together, like I still constantly have evolving things that I want to become, and a person that I want to be. So I think it's a really good way to just really put the attention on yourself. But what I wanted to say is really focusing on you when you're going through that. If you think your SP might have a third party in their life, or might, be talking to someone else, is take the focus off of them for a little bit, and put the focus on you. Like fall in love with yourself. And that was something I was never able to do. And I remember even when COVID was a really hard time for me, I think all these realizations, like this was before I knew about law of attraction, law of assumption, just like came crashing down on me. It was not a good time. But I learned a lot about myself. And I think that I, before Law of Assumption, had never really learned truly how to like love myself. So it's really cool to be able to go through that process of like falling. It sounds corny, like it sounds cliche, or like I feel like people always say that, like, oh, fall in love with yourself. But it's true that like you really have to learn to enjoy your own company and like learn. Like I'm never like I used to be bored just 5 minutes at home by myself, but now it's like I call it the art of being bored. But it's like I don't really get bored anymore. I'm like I enjoy spending time with myself. And it took a while to get there, but pouring into these different areas of my life that I identified that I really love or want to start to love, it was cool. I was able to just pour a lot into me, and I kind of called it dating myself too. Even you talk about holidays, or I should say, I was talking about holidays. And last year, I ended up spending Christmas and Thanksgiving. Kind of, I spent Christmas with friends, but Thanksgiving I was solo. Like I was alone in my apartment in SF, and I romanticized the hell out of it. I was like, you know what? I'm taking myself on a date. Like, what did I do? I went to sushi by myself. I bought myself a bottle of champagne at home. Like, I went to see a movie by myself that I wanted to see. Like, I went for a walk. I listened to music. Like, don't get me wrong. I was going through some emotions, but like, I was really taking the time to like date myself that day and take myself on the holiday that I wanted to have. And I think that helps a lot because then it puts less focus on this other person, this SP, and focus on yourself. And it helps you get into that state of, hey, I'm on the pedestal. So it's kind of a win win. Um, and then I just have one more kind of thing I want to touch on for that, like third party slash dating someone else, is that I would have extremely vivid conversations, and honestly still do to this day, from my SP's point of view. And I know that I don't know that a lot of people do this, but for me, it's super effective. I think Katie from Create Your Future, who I love, she's great. I think she's the one who kind of like got me on this idea. But basically, when I'm visualizing or at night when I'm doing my SATs, state akin to sleep, basically the state right before you fall asleep, when I'm visualizing and thinking about like what I want to happen and embodying like the feeling, falling asleep in the state of feeling. Um, I will imagine a scene, but a lot of times I'll have conversations from my SP's point of view, meaning I'll give an example. Was it yesterday? It was a couple days ago over the weekend. Um, Kevin and I were napping at his grandma's house, and when we were cuddling, like while we were falling asleep, and I wasn't asleep yet, but he was, and I was just like having conversations, like from his point of view, saying like, "Oh, I can't wait to marry you. Like, I can't wait to propose to you," and also to his other family members, like imagining him calling his mom, being like, "Yeah, I'm gonna propose, like next month, like, oh, I'm, ring shopping or whatever." But basically having these very vivid conversations from the SP's point of view for me has been super, super life changing. And it's crazy because a lot of the conversations have actually come true that I've assumed that they happened, and they did happen, or something along those lines. So an example is when my SP would be out, I remember there were times where I would like start to doubt, like, oh, is he talking to someone else? Or, oh, is someone out there? But I just think like, I would just imagine that he's talking to his friends, and in his head, he's like, oh my God, I miss Jack so much. Like, I wish she was here. Like, I really just can't wait to see her. And yeah, I remember actually that literally did happen when he was at like a concert. And this was a while ago, but he was at a concert, and sure enough, like he just like texted me the next day and was like, "Hey, I really want to hang out. Like, I really want to see you." And I was like, and this was like very early on before. This was like shortly after we were like dating again, so it was in that new period. But really having conversations from the SP's side, from their perspective, um, was helpful for me. So I did it in an imagining sense, and then actually journal too. Something or like script. So something else that came true was that last year in October, not 2023, 20, not 2022, 2021. My timeline is all confused. So it's been a minute. But in that October, that's when we like really started to get hot and heavy again after breaking up. And he actually went to Mexico. We're in the same town that we're at now, which is hilarious. Um, and I remember I was in such a good headspace, and like my energy was vibes were so high, and and I remember thinking like, oh, he's gonna tell his family, like his family's gonna ask about me. He's gonna say he wishes I was here. He's thinking about me nonstop. And I would actually script this out and verbatim. He would call, like he called me nonstop when he was on that trip, which is not usual for him. Like he's usually not like a big texter. He will call, but like not as much as he did that trip. And yeah, it was just crazy. Um, yeah, it was just crazy like how spot on it was with everything I scripted. So definitely give that a try. Sorry, my throat feels sore. I'm not used to talking this much. Okay, next question I got is how do I ignore the 3D? And I feel like I have touched on that quite a bit, just because I feel like it's all of this is kind of one compilation of how do you ignore the 3D. But one thing I would suggest is to keep a good mental diet, as in, and I know that a lot of coaches and a lot of people say that, and you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Okay, good mental diet, sure. What does that mean? To me, that means staying away from the things that don't make me feel good and only focusing on the things that do make me feel good. So an example is that Instagram always makes me feel bad. If I'm in a bad state, or if my SC is a little lower than it typically is, then I know that if I get on Instagram, like it is just not going to be a good time for me. Like I'm going to start having negative thoughts and start assuming negative things. So when I'm trying to be on a good mental diet, I just stay off Instagram. It's like it's really a matter of like self-control, but also knowing what is actually helping you versus what is hurting you. So for me, I know that watching a lot of YouTube and reading Neville Goddard content and getting on Neville Goddard's subreddits and Discord, which is how I met my friend that I've mentioned, Jonathan here, is I really like the manifesting Discords, and I can shoot you guys the link if anyone wants it. But interacting with people who are in a positive mind space and really like focusing and kind of saturating my life in law of assumption, law of attraction content for me was really helpful at the beginning. I will say that I do agree that people say, okay, yeah, but you don't want to be spending your whole day hyper focusing on watching a bunch of videos and then not actually practicing it. But I think it takes a solid sort of balance of absorbing the content and then trying to put it into practice and not just relying on watching videos. But for me, I would try to put it into practice, but then anytime I felt like I was spiraling or something negative in the 3D happened, I would go watch a video specifically about someone in a similar circumstance, or I would bookmark a lot of Reddit threads that were particularly helpful for me or resonated with me. And to me, that was like huge. And just a reminder, like, okay, the 3D like should be ignored. Like it is not real. The 3D is not real. And that almost sounds delusional to someone who's new to Neville Goddard and law of assumption, law of attraction, but it's so true that like the 3D is not real. It's just a reflection of our thoughts. So as soon as we can get our thoughts back in alignment, that's when we'll see it reflected back to us. And every time, I mentioned this earlier, but every time I doubt that is like, not that I doubt it's real, but anytime I have any like, just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like any twinge of doubt, as soon as I get my thoughts back in alignment and as soon as I get on like a better mental diet and things turn around, I'm like, wow, that's absolutely insane. I need to write down specifics because even recently I've been like, I've messaged people, been like, oh my gosh, like it's so true. Like your thoughts do create. Um, so, and I would also say in ignoring the 3D, know that it's okay to feel emotions. I know that like, you know, staying in high vibe is absolutely the thing that we need to do, as in, you know, imagining and really kind of living in this. I kind of like daydream is the way I think about it, like embodying the state of where you want to be, and really kind of living in the end, I guess is the phrase that I'm looking for. But living in the end and believing that you have what you want now, that it's not happening in the future. It's there now. The 3D just needs to catch up. I think that is 100% what you need to do, but also know that it's okay to feel emotions. Um, don't be reactionary to those emotions, as in like do your best like to not um, react towards other people what you see in the 3D, but you can feel it inside. Like for example, you know, I remember just when my SP and I were kind of starting to date again. Um, he was ups he was upset that we were going to the same concert. It's like a long story, but he was being uh, pretty distant and like kind of not aggressive. Aggressive isn't the right word. He's not aggressive, but just like not in a good mood, right? Like he was being rough towards me. Like he did not want anything to do with me. And I remember like even though I was feeling all these emotions, like as soon as he left, I cried. I cried. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And I gave myself that space to like feel that. But then I was like, okay, but this isn't real. Like it's okay that I feel this, but it is not real. Like now I'm gonna, you know, like basically realign my thoughts. And you know, I'm not going to send him a text that is coming from a place of lack. I'm not going to do anything that's coming from a place of lack. I'm just going to go about this concert, have a good ass time, like do me. And then sure enough, this concert is where we ended up like reconnecting and getting back together. And I've done a video on that too, but it was, that whole story was crazy. But I feel like I'm saying that about everything. Everything's crazy, but it is. It's. I feel like sometimes this stuff is like magic for real. And then the kind of I think fourth point of ignoring the 3D is, I would say, revision. Also, um, just again, we talked quite a bit about revision at the beginning, but as soon as something negative happens in the 3D, revise it. Like I said, I'll drop the Brian Scott revision, the long one and the short one, meditations in the like I guess description box. I don't know. It's my first live, so I'm not sure. Or if not, I'll maybe the chat. I'll drop it somewhere. But I would every time I was in a negative space, I would go back and do revision, and that did help quite a bit. Um, and again, it's still something that I think it's an art, a skill and an art that takes time to learn, and I still feel like I'm mastering that. But if you can master a vision, I think you're in a good spot. Okay, let's see. I wanted to touch on this. This is not a question I got. This is just something that I've kind of experienced over the past 2 years, a year and a half. Is that your social dynamics or your friend group might change or might shift. But I think that could be another video on its own. Pretty much the quick synopsis is, I think the more you focus on yourself and not in a selfish way, but in a way of making sure you're taking care of your needs and your energy and headspace first, your friend groups can shift quite a bit. As in, I have had quite a few people be upset with me that I don't text back in a quick enough manner, or which I do suck at texting, but it's just crazy the different reactions of some people being like, oh yeah, I totally understand, like don't worry about it, and then other people being like kind of butthurt about not responding. But I think that's all related to SC, and I'll save that for another video because I feel like that could be a solid 30-45 minutes on its own. But let's see, I did want to talk about a couple questions here. I think a lot of them I did address, But Gavin, you asked, do you believe that SPs have free will, or do we control literally everything with our own thought? So I believe it's a hybrid. I believe at a high level, we, the individual, have the power, and the, like, we, our world, right? Like what we see and what we view is, we're everything. We're the writer, we're the director, we're the actor, or we choose the actors. It's literally our play. So I think that we do have the ultimate say in what someone does or what part they play in our life. But for me, I don't believe that we micromanage the individual little things, because they are their own people. Like, they do have their own thoughts and their own feelings. It's just what we think they're thinking or what we think they're feeling is just a reflection of our thoughts. And I don't know if that makes sense. Um, but it's just interesting that in like our movie, like there was another YouTuber, I always forget her name, Universe Guru, who I recently discovered, but she came up with something. She mentioned that in your movie, what you see, how you perceive other people, it's different than their movie. Like, I'm not explaining this very well, but what like in my movie, I'm the main character, right? And like how other people interact with me and what I think they're thinking or what I think they're feeling is completely just what I'm feeling on the inside being reflected back. In their movie, they might view me as a completely different person than how I feel I am myself. Um, so that's kind of how I view it. I don't think that was a very good answer to your question, but I do think that we have the ultimate power and we dictate dictate's a strong word, but we say what happens, right? Like, it's our story, we say what goes, but they do have their own personality traits and like they do their own kind of day-to-day things. I think we give the overarching storyline and then they can kind of fill in the blanks with the small things that don't necessarily matter in the bigger picture, if that makes sense. Like, I know kind of when and how my SP, will propose, but I don't know and how or put energy into what shoes he's going to wear for the day unless there's like a specific reason. So I don't know that makes sense or answers your question, but that's kind of my personal take on it. Um, but I think that is most of the questions. I'm kind of going through here. Um, Gloomy, you did have a question. Can you manifest not being blind anymore? Honestly, I personally have not had much experience with physical manifestation changes, especially with like diseases or anything. I do with like health and fitness, but as far as ailments or anything that is debilitating, I haven't actually put that into practice myself. But I do know that Neville Goddard, kind of the father of law of assumption, has said that it is and has examples of it absolutely being possible to make huge, changes within your body, within your system, whatever's going on. So I do think that if you or someone is going blind, there is, definitely with the law of assumption, positive thinking, there's definitely ways to reverse that and change it. I know that, what's his name? Elmer Jr. He's pretty big, I think, in the YouTube community now. I know he has quite a few videos on this actually. I don't know. I don't remember if they're like personal, anecdotal experiences or just Neville Goddard readings, because I know he does a lot of Neville Goddard readings. But I know he does talk about that quite a bit. So I don't know that I have great advice for that specifically. I don't have a personal standpoint on it, but I do. But from what I have seen and what I have heard, yes, I do believe it's completely possible to make large, significant, I should say, physical and bodily changes in your system. feel like I worded that very weird. But yeah, okay. So, any other questions or any other? Oh, I see Kay said put the Brian Scott meditations in the chat. Okay, I will see if I can do that now because I do have them bookmarked. And while I'm pulling those up, my thumbnail is ridiculous. But while I'm pulling those up, by the way, I do have playlists saved of videos that I like, and I don't add to it as much as I probably should. But I do have like a manifesting playlist that I made public with. There's like this Dylan James affirmation rampage I do every morning, and just a lot of good videos on there that I like, and they're from a bunch of different people. So it's not, I do love Dylan James. I do love Katie from Create Your Future. But I have a lot of different like YouTubers that I like. Okay, so this is the 10-minute. I'm dropping this in the chat. 10-minute revision meditation for Brian Scott, and then let me see the long one because I actually don't have that one saved. Brian Scott revision meditation. He has a lot of great meditations, by the way. Although I will say last night I did his newest one and I had the weirdest dreams. I do not recommend that one. Where is the long one? Revision meditation. Oh, yep, here it is. This is an hour and a half. Yeah, okay. Here is the longer one. Cool. And here's the longer revision meditation. And you guys should be able to see the chat afterwards, so let me know if you can't for some reason. First time doing the live, but I like it. It was fun. Thank you guys for joining. I know, I don't have a particularly big following or anything, but definitely love chatting with you guys and love seeing like Speedy, obviously Jonathan, my friend, Kay, even Gavin. Like I recognize you guys from the comments and stuff, so it's cool to be able to live interact with you guys, and I'm glad you were able to make it, even if just for a short time. But yeah, and I had someone recently ask me about I don't want to say like they said like a session with you, or they said coaching session. I don't really consider myself, I don't think coach. I never liked the word coach, but I am going to start doing sessions for those interested, really just for, it just makes it easier to ask like one-on-one questions. It's kind of the same forum where it'll just be a live, like, a Zoom call. And it'll be inexpensive. I'm thinking it'll be like $25 or so. So it'll be definitely, I think, way more affordable than some of the other kind of people out there. But if you just want someone to bounce different thoughts and ideas off of or with, I am going to start doing that. So I thought I was up and running. Like I have a placeholder, manifestwithjax.com. I have the domain. I'm working on a website. It's just been a little crazy with the move and then baby Coco. And now we got Valentine's Day coming up and I had some work deadlines too. But yeah, I'm hoping to do that soon. But if you are interested in that, feel free to drop me a comment or email. My email is just manifestwithjax@gmail.com. But I'll try to keep doing these lives, and definitely I'm going to get back to making videos more often, I promise. But thank you guys for joining, and love you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.